Hello people, this is Mr. McAllen and another short video just to talk about the basics of determining whether or not when you look at a graph, is it going to be possible for you to find an inverse relation or an inverse function for that graph. So the basic idea is, through the years with mathematics, you should have been taught about, does your function or is your relation that you see a graph, is it a function or not? So we've had some different types of graphs you've been given, and we give you all sorts of things, and we expect you to be able to visually inspect and see, is it going to be a function, or is it going to be just a relation? And in this case, when we're just looking to see if something is a function or relation, we do what's called the vertical line test. So if I use red ink, you can see here that this relation passes a vertical line test, meaning it has only one x value mapped to one y value. So this would definitely be a function. This one, the second one, clearly is not a function. It fails the vertical line test, so we would just call this a relation. Okay, then we have like this absolute value function. It seems like, I guess this would be x equals the absolute value of y, maybe, something along those lines. This one clearly fails the vertical line test, and this next one here is going to be a function because it passes the vertical line test. So this is a review. This is stuff that you should already know by now. But now we get into the realm of identifying for these same functions if they are, well, so we're all going to call these relations to begin with, but does your relation, or it could be a function, does your relation or function have an inverse function or relation? So this is solved just as easily, but using the horizontal line test. So let me show you an example. So if I give you a function that looks like, this, I'm stating this is a function. It's a parabola. Now, the parabola is definitely a function. It's y equals f of x. It's f of x equals x squared. It's definitely known to be a function. Passes vertical line test. So is this going to have an inverse function? And the answer is no, because it fails, pardon me, it fails the horizontal line test. The horizontal line test is an easy test to verify or to see if your function has an inverse function, and this one will not. This one will have an inverse relation. Now, just to show you, if I look at this graph, but if I go back to Desmos, I did graph a parabola in the earlier video. You can see the red parabola, and I just switched the x with y pairs, as you can see in statement 3. In statement 2, I made x equal f of y, which essentially switches the xy pairs, and you can see that I have a sideways parabola now, which clearly fails the vertical line test. So instead of having to do all that switching pairs and everything, you just switch the test. So the test has become, instead of calling it a horizontal line, a vertical line test for the function, which is still something we use to test for functions, we now use a horizontal line test to identify quickly if our graph will have an inverse function. So this works nicely with, let's just say that you start out and you have a sideways parabola. This sideways parabola, this is x equals y squared. This actually has an inverse function. So so this one passes the horizontal line test. If we did another graph, let's just say we had a graph that looked like like the square root, right? This is a function, and it's also since it passes the horizontal line test, it also has its inverse would have an inverse function, not just calling it an inverse relation. So there are a couple different cases. You could have so just to kind of give you the different scenarios. So the first scenario, f of x, or I should say, y equals x squared, could be, and it actually is, a function, and it looks like a parabola, but it has an inverse relation because its function fails the horizontal line test, making it only able to have an inverse relation. Then the next scenario is like you could have a function like y equals x cubed. So y equals x cubed, if you look at that, that's clearly a function. Passes the vertical line test, and it passes the horizontal line test. So because of that, it is a function that also has an inverse function. And then there's a case where you have y equals, let's just say it's I have a relationship like x equals y squared. This is a sideways parabola, or sideways looking graph. This is not a function, but this relation has an inverse function. So there are a few different scenarios, but the big thing is like the big time saver for you guys is going to be when you're looking at a function. Let's say you're looking at sine of x. You can look at sine of x in its full domain, and you can clearly say that sine of x, as it's drawn here with the domain that it has, sine of x will not have an inverse function, because of failure of the horizontal line test, because you can clearly see that it fails the horizontal line test. I should really work on making sure that's, so you can see here it's failing the horizontal line test, meaning that this function does not have an inverse function. I hope this video helps explain a couple things, and we're going to use these concepts in class on Monday.